Love can make you reckless. It can make you lie. And sometimes, it can put you on trial for murder. Tonight, Ethan Cross, Clara Avery's secret lover, steps into the courtroom, accused not just of loving her, but of killing her. But is he guilty, or simply the easiest man to blame? In this episode, we'll step inside the trial of Ethan Cross, where prosecutors painted him as the jealous lover who snapped, while his defense argued he was a scapegoat for Richard Avery's power and lies. We'll explore the evidence, the testimony, and the shocking twists that kept the jury and the nation on edge. By late 2018, more than a year after Clara's disappearance, investigators had enough to bring charges. The cabin of secrets had fueled public terror, but prosecutors weren't ready to tie it to Richard Avery or a mysterious predator. Instead, they zeroed in on Ethan Cross. The case was built on 3 pillars. 1. Motive. Ethan was in love with Clara and furious at her hesitations to leave Richard. 2. Opportunity. His alibi was uncorroborated the night she vanished. 3. Evidence. Clara's bracelet found in his truck, plus witness claims of seeing his vehicle near Blackwood Forest. The indictment. Second-degree murder, kidnapping, and obstruction. The trial of Ethan Cross began on January 14, 2019. The prosecution painted a picture of passion turned deadly. They argued Ethan lured Clara to Blackwood Forest with the note, "Meet me where the river bends." When she wavered, he snapped. They claimed he killed her in a jealous rage, burned evidence at the fire pit, and planted confusion to deflect blame. They showed the jury photos of the bracelet, grainy images of his truck, and the damning Google searches, "How to Disappear Without a Trace," and "Shallow Graves, Pennsylvania." The prosecutor's voice was sharp as she turned to the jury. This wasn't a conspiracy. This wasn't a billionaire's cover-up. This was a man who couldn't handle rejection. And Clara Avery paid the price. Ethan's defense attorney, however, told a different story. She argued Ethan was the perfect scapegoat, poor, rough-edged, easy to vilify compared to Richard Avery. She hammered at Richard's crumbling alibi, the secret safe, the life insurance policy, and Clara's own journals about fearing her husband. She also attacked the evidence. The bracelet? Easily planted. The truck sighting? A neighbor's memory a year after the fact. The searches? Common phrases anyone might look up when discussing running away. Her refrain echoed in the courtroom. Where is Clara Avery's body? Without it, the state cannot prove murder. The trial became theater. Rosa, the housekeeper, testified tearfully about overhearing Richard threaten Clara. "If you walk away, you'll regret it." The jury leaned in. Lydia, Clara's friend, described Clara's confessions about the affair with Ethan, her dreams of leaving, and her deep fear of Richard's power. Ethan himself took the stand. Nervous, hands shaking, he swore, "I loved Clara. I didn't kill her. She was planning to leave him, not me." But under cross-examination, the prosecutor forced him into contradictions. Did he expect Clara to show up that night? Did he drive near the forest? Ethan stumbled, his words cracking. The jury's eyes narrowed. And then came the bombshell, a surprise witness. A former maintenance worker from the Avery estate testified that weeks before Clara vanished, he saw Richard arguing violently with Clara by the pool. According to him, Richard shoved Clara, shouting, "You'll never ruin me." The courtroom gasped. The defense smiled. The prosecution objected. But the judge allowed it. For a moment, suspicion shifted away from Ethan. The shadow of Richard Avery loomed larger than ever. After weeks of testimony, fiery arguments, and emotional breakdowns, the jury deliberated for 4 days. In the end, Ethan Cross was found guilty of obstruction, for lying to police, but not guilty of murder. The jury said the state failed to prove Clara's death beyond a reasonable doubt without her body. The verdict split the nation. Some saw it as justice. Others saw it as failure. And Clara? She was still missing. For Maple Falls, the trial ended not with closure, but with more questions. Richard Avery's world begins to unravel as investigators return to the husband who may have been hiding in plain sight all along. Money builds empires. but shadows live inside them. And when the walls of Richard Avery's world began to crack, Maple Falls discovered that the man they once saw as untouchable wasn't just a grieving husband. He was a man whose empire was built on lies, and whose shadow might finally reveal the truth about Clara Avery. In this episode, we'll peel back the glossy layers of Richard Avery's empire and step into a courtroom where his wealth and influence no longer shield him. We'll see his fortune crumble, his secrets exposed, and his shadow grow darker as investigators build their strongest case yet. January 2019. The trial of Ethan Cross ended in a shock, guilty of obstruction, but not guilty of Clara's murder. The verdict left the town divided. But in one way, it united suspicion. If Ethan wasn't Clara's killer, then the shadow of Richard Avery loomed larger than ever. Richard thought the trial had cleared him. Instead, it made him the center of renewed scrutiny. The media, hungry after Ethan's courtroom spectacle, now turned its cameras back to Richard. Headlines screamed, "The husband's secrets," and "Is Maple Falls billionaire next?" Behind the iron gates of the Avery estate, Richard retreated. But outside, his empire was collapsing. For years, Richard's grocery chain was the pride of Pennsylvania. But whispers of lawsuits and financial strain grew louder. Now, under the spotlight of Clara's disappearance, creditors pulled back, investors fled, and board members began resigning. Detectives dug into his finances, uncovering offshore accounts, shell companies, and a trail of questionable deals. One by one, Richard's shields were stripped away. And then came the life insurance policy, the $5 million he had taken out on Clara just weeks before her disappearance. It no longer looked like estate planning. It looked like motive. Public opinion shifted. The billionaire wasn't Maple Falls' savior anymore. He was its suspect. By mid-2019, investigators had a case. Motive: divorce would cost him half his fortune. Clara's disappearance solved that problem. Opportunity: phone records placed him near Maple Falls, not Pittsburgh, the night she vanished. Evidence: Clara's journals, the threats overheard by the housekeeper, the safe with unsigned divorce papers. Prosecutors argued Richard was cornered. Clara planned to leave him, and his empire was on the verge of collapse. In their theory, Richard silenced Clara to save both his fortune and his pride. But Richard had his own defense: money, power, and an army of lawyers. October 2019. The trial of Richard Avery began. The courthouse in Harrisburg overflowed with reporters, protesters, and spectators. Tickets for seats inside the courtroom were scalped on the street. It wasn't just a trial, it was a national event. The prosecution opened with fire. This isn't about a missing wife. This is about control. This is about a man who thought his money made him untouchable. But Clara Avery left behind her truth, and today we bring it to light. The defense countered with precision. There is no body. There is no crime scene. What the state has is speculation, rumor, and prejudice. Richard Avery is guilty of being powerful, not of murder. The battle lines were drawn. Courtroom drama, testimonies and twists. The housekeeper's voice. Rosa, the Avery housekeeper, testified once more. Her voice shook as she repeated the words she overheard. "If you walk away, you'll regret it." The courtroom was silent. Richard's eyes never left her. The financial expert. A forensic accountant detailed Richard's offshore accounts and the timing of the life insurance. His calm testimony painted a man moving pieces to protect himself and possibly erase his wife. Clara's sister. Tears streaming, she read the letter Clara never mailed. "If you are reading this, I didn't make it out." The jury listened, faces grave. Richard takes the stand. Against his lawyer's advice, Richard insisted on testifying. He portrayed himself as a victim of hysteria, a man punished for being rich. But under cross-examination, cracks formed. When asked why Clara's divorce papers were in his safe, Richard snapped. "Because she didn't mean it. She was mine." The courtroom gasped. His lawyers buried their faces in their hands. The turning point came with a surprise piece of evidence. Detectives had recovered partial DNA under Clara's fingernails, preserved from the gown found in Blackwood Forest. Technology, updated since the early stages of the case, revealed a match: Richard Avery. The defense scrambled, suggesting contamination, but the impact was devastating. Clara had fought back. And she had left her mark. Gasps filled the courtroom. For the first time, Richard Avery looked shaken. Richard Avery's empire was in ruins. His grocery chain collapsed. His mansion was surrounded by protesters. And in court, the jury prepared to decide whether the billionaire was a grieving husband or a calculating killer. The shadow of Richard Avery stretched across Maple Falls, darker and longer than ever. Every empire hides a vault. And inside Richard Avery's vault, the last place he thought anyone would look, lay the secret that could finally end the mystery of Clara Avery. Tonight, we open the safe, and with it, the darkest chapter of Maple Falls. In this episode, we'll uncover the hidden contents of Richard Avery's private safe, documents, recordings, and evidence that tie together decades of lies. We'll reveal the chilling truth about his marriage, his finances, and his possible connection to not just Clara's disappearance, but to other women who vanished long before her. The trial had already battered Richard's carefully crafted image. His angry outburst on the stand, "She was mine," and the DNA match from Clara's gown had painted him not as a grieving husband, but as a man capable of violence. But prosecutors knew juries needed more than words and emotions. They needed something that tied Richard directly to Clara's fate. Enter the second safe. Detectives had long suspected Richard held more secrets than what they'd found in his office. The burner phone, the offshore accounts, the unsigned divorce papers. Through subpoenas, forensic accountants traced rental payments for a downtown Harrisburg storage unit, leased under a shell company connected to Richard's business. Inside the unit was a steel safe, nearly 6 feet tall, weighing hundreds of pounds. And when it was finally opened, it told a story Richard could never explain away. The contents were staggering. Photographs, hundreds of them, neatly organized in envelopes. Many were of Clara, captured in candid moments, walking to her car, sitting at the cafe, even stepping out of her yoga studio. They weren't taken by paparazzi. They were surveillance shots. Audio recordings, dozens of cassette tapes and digital files, labeled with dates stretching back nearly 2 decades. On one tape, Clara's voice could be heard arguing, "I can't live like this, Richard. You don't own me." His cold reply followed, "You'll never leave me. Not alive." Documents, a ledger of payments to private investigators, some dating back to the 1980s. One investigator's file contained surveillance notes not just on Clara, but on Marjorie Flynn, the young waitress found dead in Blackwood Forest. Jewelry box. Inside were women's personal items, rings, necklaces, and one bracelet belonging to Clara. Prosecutors would later call it a trophy box. The safe connected Richard not only to Clara's disappearance but also to Marjorie Flynn and possibly others. The pattern emerges. The FBI descended on the evidence. Forensic experts authenticated the photographs, confirming they were taken over years, some with expensive surveillance equipment. The recordings were even worse. On several tapes, Richard's voice seethed with rage. "If you embarrass me again, I'll bury you like the rest." That phrase, "like the rest," sent investigators spiraling. Who were the rest? Cold case detectives reopened files of at least 4 missing women from counties where Richard's stores operated. All young. All last seen near Maple Falls. Was Richard Avery not just a controlling husband, but a serial predator hiding behind wealth and status? The confession on tape. The most damning piece of evidence was buried on a digital file, time-stamped just days before Clara's disappearance. On it, Clara's voice trembled. "If you hurt me, they'll know. I've told people the truth." Richard's voice cut through, calm but venomous. "No one will ever believe them. No one will ever believe you. By the time they realize, you'll be gone." It wasn't an outright confession, but in the courtroom, it landed like one. Prosecutors now argued not only that Richard killed Clara, but that he had orchestrated the silencing of women for decades. Among the evidence, investigators also discovered a memory card labeled Only C. On it was a short video clip, shaky, clearly filmed on Clara's phone. In it, she spoke directly to the camera. "If you're seeing this, it means something happened. Richard is watching me, following me. If I vanish, he did it. Please, don't let him win." The courtroom wept when it was played. Jurors shifted uncomfortably. Even Richard's lawyers looked shaken. For Clara's family, it was both validation and devastation. She had tried to leave a trail. She had tried to speak from beyond the grave. The defense tried desperately to discredit the evidence. They claimed the tapes were fabricated, the photographs manipulated, the safe planted by enemies seeking to destroy Richard's empire. But the more they argued, the more desperate they looked. When prosecutors displayed the ledger connecting Richard to Marjorie Flynn, the jury's faces hardened. When they played Clara's final video, even the defense's star expert admitted its metadata confirmed authenticity. Richard sat stone-faced, but the shadow he had once controlled now devoured him. Richard Avery's empire wasn't just cracked, it was obliterated. The safe had revealed surveillance, recordings, payments, trophies, and Clara's final words. The shadow of suspicion was no longer just suspicion. It was a mountain of evidence. For Maple Falls, the myth of the untouchable billionaire was gone. In its place stood a predator, cornered at last. But one question still haunted the town, the jury, and Clara's family. Where was her body? The final twist. The trial reaches its conclusion, and one last shocking discovery rewrites everything we thought we knew about Clara Avery's fate. For 2 years, Clara Avery's disappearance haunted Maple Falls. It destroyed reputations, uncovered decades of secrets, and brought one of Pennsylvania's most powerful men to his knees. But just when everyone thought the case was over, one final twist changed everything. Tonight, we close the file, but the answers may just be more than the questions. In this finale, we'll take you inside the final days of Richard Avery's trial, the shocking verdict, and the last-minute discovery that turned the case upside down. We'll reveal what really happened to Clara Avery and why the truth left Maple Falls more unsettled than ever. By March 2020, Richard Avery's trial had stretched on for months. His empire was gone, his fortune drained, his safe full of secrets laid bare for the world to see. The prosecution rested its case with Clara's haunting video message, her voice trembling, "If I vanish, he did it." The defense fought desperately, but momentum had shifted. The jury prepared for deliberation. The town prepared for closure. But closure wasn't coming. Not yet. For 5 days, the jury deliberated. Outside the courthouse, crowds chanted for justice. Inside, speculation ran wild. Would Richard be convicted of murder without a body? Would his wealth buy him freedom one last time? On the 6th day, the jury returned. The courtroom fell silent as the foreperson read the verdict. Guilty of kidnapping. Guilty of obstruction. But not guilty of murder. Gasps filled the room. Reporters scrambled. Clara's family sobbed, clutching each other. Richard smirked. He would serve time, but not life. He would never be branded her killer. It seemed Clara's case would end in a hollow victory. Richard punished, but the truth buried with her. And then, the twist arrived. Just days after the verdict, a construction crew working near the banks of the Susquehanna River, not far from Maple Falls, unearthed something chilling. A shallow grave, wrapped in plastic sheeting. Inside was the decomposed body of a woman. Dental records confirmed the impossible. It was Clara Avery. Her body had been hidden less than 10 miles from the Avery estate the entire time. The autopsy delivered a devastating twist. Clara had not been shot, stabbed, or strangled. She had drowned. Trace evidence suggested she was alive when she entered the water, bound at the wrists, lungs filled with river sediment. And on her wrist, investigators found something horrifying, a second set of zip ties, not matching the ones Richard had access to. This meant one thing: someone else had been there. Investigators scoured Clara's body and belongings for answers. Among her remains, they found a small flash drive sealed in plastic, Clara's final act of defiance. On it was a video diary she had begun recording in the weeks before her disappearance. In the last entry, filmed the night of the gala, Clara whispered, "I'm meeting him tonight. Not Richard. Not Ethan. He promised me freedom. If I don't come back, you'll know I was wrong." The camera shook as she glanced toward the door. A shadow passed across the frame. Then the video cut off. The Kim wasn't Richard. It wasn't Ethan. It was the mysterious man she had called the Escape. And he was still out there. The revelation shattered everything. Richard Avery, already convicted of kidnapping, now looked like he might not have killed Clara after all. Ethan Cross, once branded the jealous lover, appeared more tragic than guilty. The real killer, the man in the baseball cap, the one who had stalked Clara in photographs, the one she had secretly pinned her hopes on, had never been caught. Maple Falls erupted. The Avery verdict was called a miscarriage of justice. Clara's family demanded a new investigation. And the media asked the question no one wanted to face. Had everyone been chasing the wrong man all along? The case of Clara Avery left Maple Falls with as many scars as answers. Richard Avery went to prison, but not for murder. Ethan Cross walked free, but forever stained by suspicion. Clara's body was found, but her final act revealed a third player, the Escape, who vanished into the shadows. And Maple Falls learned the cruelest truth of all. Sometimes justice isn't a verdict. Sometimes it's a ghost that never leaves. Clara Avery wanted freedom. Instead, she found a river's silence. Her story is one of power, love, betrayal, and secrets that refuse to stay buried. And while Richard Avery sits behind bars, the man Clara trusted with her escape still walks free. Which means the final twist of Clara Avery's story may not have been written yet. Who was he really?